So we've established that you have to be able to learn how to drive and given that opportunity, right? You all agree with that, don't you? Now, who is it that should take that responsibility to help you learn to drive? A good driver, a driving instructor, parents. Are all of those things in one person? Okay. Christian, I believe you might actually think that. That's what's worrisome, that you actually think a younger person should teach you how to drive. That would explain a lot of your behavior and why sometimes you might act like a 3-year-old. I'm just saying. Okay, just ignore his behavior. So let's try this for you. Why don't you go and enter in that code, Taylor? It's okay if you know that code. It's not to anything, Christian, except to get onto this class, which you're already in.
Am I?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't know that. It's a boy.
Were you able to get in there, Taylor? Yep, there you go. Okay, so you'll go to classwork, and the one we're working on is number 8 today. The stream just has, if you've ever used Google Classroom before, the stream just has updates on what we're working on for the day, week by week, okay? We've read the first part of this article. We've kind of surmised it for you. So let's take a peek inside the brain is where we're at, which is on, what page is that? Page 251. It's got that little brain scan. It's right where you'll see on the screen as well. A peek inside the brain. The National Institute of Health, that's what the NIH stands for, brain research suggests that the problem is human biology. A crucial part of the teen's brain, the area that peers ahead and considers consequences, remains undeveloped. Okay, which can explain some of the impulsive behavior, right? That means careless attitudes and rash emotions often drive teen decisions, says Jay Geed, Chief of Brain Imaging in the Child Psychiatric Unit at the National Institute of Mental Health, who's leading the study. It all comes down to impulse control, Geed says. The brain is changing a lot longer than we used to think. And that part of the brain involved in decision-making and controlling impulses is among the latest to come on board. The teen brain is a paradox. Some areas, those that control senses, reactions, and physical abilities, are fully developed in teenagers. Physically, they should be ruling the world, Geed says. But adolescence is not that great of a time emotionally. How many of you would say your emotions go up and down? How many of you get angry at your parents and you don't really know why? Or you get angry at them for things you don't really remember the next day? Oh, I think some of you are fibbing. Geed and an international research team have analyzed 4,000 brain scans from 2,000 volunteers to document how brains evolve as children mature. Okay, so it shows a little bit about the amount of gray matter that exists, right? And we'll see what that study says here. In his office at the NIH, Geed points to an image of a brain on his computer screen that illustrates brain development from childhood to adulthood. As he sets the time lapse in motion, the brain turns blue rapidly in some areas and more slowly in others. One area that's slow to turn blue, which represents development over time, so I guess the more blue it is, the more development it has, is the right side just over the temple. Everyone know where the temple's at? It's right here, right? It's this little ridge right next to your eye that has like a little indentation, okay? So it's on your right side they're talking about. It's a spot on the head where a parent might tap a frustrated finger while asking his teen, "What were you thinking?" This underdeveloped area is called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. Long name, don't need to know it. The underdeveloped blue on Geed's screen is where thoughts of long-term consequences spring to consciousness. And in teen after teen, the research team found it's not fully mature. So if teens can't see the long-term consequences, do they make decisions based on how things might affect them? Okay, Alex, you're saying that yes, you do think about long-term consequences? Okay, so you have to slow down to think about it, right? What he's saying is that as you get older, that becomes a natural thought process. As your brain matures, so as your brain matures and this area becomes more blue, you're more able to do that without a whole lot of thought. Okay, so again, if you're following along, we are right within here, right? This is the top rung, Gede says. This is the part of the brain that, in a sense, associates everything, all of our hopes and dreams for the future, all of our memories of the past, our values. Sorry, I lost my spot there, trying to get someone on track because they're not following along. All of our memories of the past, our values, everything going on in our environment, everything to make a decision. When a smart, talented, and very mature teen does something a parent might call stupid, Gede says it's this underdeveloped part of the brain that has most likely failed. That's the part of the brain that helps look farther ahead, he says. In a sense, increasing the time between impulse and decisions. It seems not to get as good as it's going to get until age 25. This slow process plays a kind of dirty trick on teens. Those hormones are churning. As their bodies turn more adult-like, the hormones encourage more risk-taking and thrill-seeking. That might be nature's way of helping them leave the nest. But as the hormones fire up, the part of the brain that responds to pleasure, known as the limbic system, emotions run high, which this is the part of your brain that's developing a great deal. That's why your emotions are so high as a teenager. Those emotions make it hard to quickly form wise judgments, the kind drivers must make every day and every second, actually. That's also why teens often seem more impetuous, more likely to make impulse decisions than adults. In making decisions, they rely more on the parts of their brain that control emotion. They're hotter when angry and colder when sad, Gede says. That's where the blue and the red come from in that above scan. When a teen is traveling 15 to 20 miles per hour over the speed limit, the part of his or her brain that processes the thrill is working brilliantly. If you've ever ridden a dirt bike, if you've ever ridden an ATV, that's the same feeling you get whenever you're going over a big jump or you're going faster than what you know you should be, right? So your brain is working really well. But the part that warns of negative consequences, it's all but useless. It may not seem that fast to them, Gede says, because they're not weighing the same factors an adult might. They're not asking themselves, he says, should I go fast or not? And dying is not really part of the equation. Precisely how brain development plays out on the roads has yet to be studied. Gede says brain scans of teens and driving simulations might tell researchers exactly what's going on in their heads. That could lead to a better training and clearer understanding of which teens are ready to make critical driving decisions. In theory, a teen's brain could eventually be scanned to determine whether he or she was neurologically fit to drive. But Gede says that ethical crossroad is too radical to seriously consider today. We are just at the threshold of this. So essentially, at the end, all they're saying is that there's more to study, but they're just figuring it out. Only within the last 20 to 30 years have they been able to scan the brain to figure out you all make irrational, impulsive decisions. And we have brain evidence to prove it. That's why the scan that Maverick's still looking at is so critical, is that they know these areas of the brain are undeveloped, okay? We know that as you age, right? So age 5, starting up here with all this green, and right in here about where my son's at age 9, okay? You know, he has some thought-driven ideas, but up here in the front cortex, he doesn't think about, oh, well, I'm not putting my shoes on very quickly, so we're going to be running late today. So that's why I have to do it for him and stay on top of him. How many of you have younger siblings that you constantly have to remind to do something? Okay, younger cousins, right? Like you seem like, I've already told you 5 times to do this one thing. Why aren't you doing it? Well, Is their brain developed to understand the consequences of not doing what you told them? It is literally showing you they are not, Maddie. I understand. Okay, so she's probably right about in here. Okay. Now, she just age-wise. Now, maybe her brain isn't developing just as quick, because that's what this article also says, is that it takes time for different brains to develop differently. Just like some people grow at different times. Okay. I was 5'4" in middle school and like 250 pounds roughly. I was roughly the shape of the desk you're sitting in, right? You are not 5'4". Right. Very, very different though. So looking at this, the brain develops just like the body does. It grows at different rates for everyone. Okay.